Hello everyone. In this video, I'll be discussing monogamy, its history, and its necessity. Millions of years ago, the primitive man lived almost like animals. He was wild, cruel, and reckless. Bound by no authority, law, or code, he lived fiercely, only to satiate his biological urge. Violence was his only means to eat and to breed. In Darwinian terms, survival and reproduction were his ultimate goals. Eventually, with the invention of the wheel and the discovery of farming, our wild ancestors dropped their hunter gatherer lifestyle. They started living in groups, cultivating crops, building houses, farming, and protecting territories, thereby causing a surplus of resources. In such abundance, one might assume there would be peace and tranquility. However, the reality was quite different. Instead of enjoying the fruits borne by the agricultural revolution, men started forming alliances and waging wars against each other. This was the beginning of politics and the origin of visible social hierarchy in the human civilization. Men aspired to be leaders to lead their tribes, further aiming to be kings and building kingdoms. Few also dreamt of being emperors and trying to establish an empire. It seemed as if men were not content with just safety and provisions. Deep down, they desired something more, perhaps status and power. But why why were men willing to commit mass destruction and murders to achieve the fleeting position of status and power? Why? Try to figure out the answer by yourself. Ever wonder why does a lion kill another lion? Why does a peacock dance in the rain? Why does a frog produce loud and distinct noises? Why does a firefly flash light? Why does a nightingale sing? The answer is female. Be it humans, animals, birds, or insects. Males of all species do ridiculous things to attract females, irrespective of such act requiring them to endanger their own life or that of the other. It is a cold, harsh biological truth that males across all species seek dominance, power, and status because it gives them access to better and greater number of females. Since there are always exceptions, nothing can be claimed as absolute truth, and thus everything becomes debatable. Like one might argue that not all great men or kings sought status or power to get women. Some were even celibate till death. Sure, not all men put in work or lead their lives to attract females, but one thing is certain that most men do. And this is exactly what you need to understand and accept while studying any kind of sociological work. Generalizations are necessary to get a broader view of the truth. Coming back to the modern times, men across all the cultures and countries behave in a similar fashion. They act dominant, competitive, or aggressive when a female is around. Some study hard, to get a reputed college or to get a government job. Some work in multiple shifts to buy a luxury car or a watch. Some become artists, professionals, entrepreneurs, and businessmen, each according to their own interest and capabilities. However, despite millions of years, one thing that has remained common between the primitive man and the modern man is the discontent with what he has and the inherent desire to achieve status and power. A curious mind might ask, why doesn't the modern man, like his ancestors, resort to violence? Why doesn't he wage wars and kills his modern day counterparts? Has he become weak? Has he lost the desire to be a king or to establish an empire? Don't you find it strange yet interesting that except humans, males across all species today follow same tactics as that of their ancestors to attract females, while modern men have taken up a different approach and have devised various direct and indirect methods to lure a female to mate with them. For example, the modern man tries to excel in a field like arts, sports, law, commerce, business, science, technology, etc., by virtue of which he climbs up the social hierarchy, indirectly securing status and power, whereas the primitive man had to either kill or get killed to secure a mate. That is, exactly like the animals. As discussed earlier, men have this innate, dominant, competitive, and aggressive energy. And just like every other energy, this masculine energy too could be used for destructive or constructive purposes. Thus, like animals, when the primitive man committed violence and waged wars against each other, he lost more than he gained. For example, when a king waged a war, thousands of men, that is, soldiers, fought under his leadership. When the war was lost, several men died without incentives, while when the war was won, a major portion of the proceeds, that is, resources and women, were taken up by the king and his ministers, whereas the large number of men who were soldiers received not much of a reward. Therefore, for those majority of men, war was an unjust gamble because, be it the king or the normal soldier, both staked their lives on the battlefield, but the reward was distributed disproportionately. Moreover, a normal soldier had a great chance of being killed than that of the king, and the only way to reach up the social ladder was to either rise up exceptionally by being good at warfare or by killing and replacing the king. Both of these tasks for a common soldier were almost impossible. Thus, there was a huge disparity amongst men themselves. Exceptional men like kings, ministers, commanders, etc., got abundance of resources and had multiple women either as wives or concubines, whereas the common soldier or the average man, as we may refer him, barely got a woman to mate with. Exceptional men also had a higher number of offsprings, and their greater resources ensured higher chance of survival for their offsprings. Whereas the common man, if he did mate, got fewer offsprings, and due to lack of resources, they barely had much chances of survival. Therefore, In that era, physical superiority contributed to financial security, while financial security led to procreative prolificity. We can say that this was a very primitive stage of human civilization where our societies function no different than that of the animals. For instance, apes, such as gorillas, have similar social hierarchy. The alpha or the dominant male gorilla rules almost like a king. He leads the entire group, has access to larger resources, and breeds with majority of the females. And the only way for other gorillas to climb up the hierarchy is to use their physical prowess and to replace the alpha. But such kind of societies that function purely on instinctual behavior do not outgrow themselves, be it animals or humans. Species that focuses solely on survival and reproduction have a very cyclic form of history. Their generations are born, they kill to survive, reproduce, and die. Thus, their progress is mostly biological in nature. Other measures of progress, such as emotional, intellectual, economical, technological, moral, spiritual, etc., have no place in their society. And that's what separates us humans from animals. Our ability to explore all the dimensions of our senses and to create a world of our own beyond just focusing on biological urges is what makes us different and unique. So, what got us to where we are? When did the barbaric tendencies drop? What made us civil? Monogamy, the practice of a male and female pairing together exclusively for a lifetime with the intent of producing offsprings and ensuring their survival. The introduction of monogamy led to a broader development in all aspects of the human society. Monogamy is the reason why we have arts, literature, music, humor, and all the other pleasures that heal the heart. Monogamy is the reason why men build skyscrapers, clean the sewers, and labor at farms. Monogamy is what motivates men to become doctors, engineers, lawyers, soldiers, etc. Monogamy is why men became less violent and started obeying the law. Some listeners might doubt my claim and may term it as absurd. To an extent, I admit that monogamy is not the sole but one of the many factors that contributed to the development of our civilization. However, I emphasize that without monogamy, all the so called progress wouldn't have been possible. The reason being that the practice of monogamy eventually became the institution of marriage. The marriage that was considered a sacred form of union, not only of the body, but of the soul, that gave legitimacy to the children born in it. Let's connect the dots first. What's the link between monogamous marriages and overall development of society? Why do certain countries or religions allow polygamous relationships and marriages? To understand my perspective, first answer this question. As a man, what would you choose? A. Live your life going to wars, not knowing if you will secure a wife. Or B. Live your life flipping burgers, ensuring that you will get a wife and a family. If you choose option A, you are wasting your time listening to this tape. And if you choose option B, just like the common man, the majority of the man, then you fall into the category of men who want a wife, a family, children, safety, and a happy life. And that is what the monogamous arrangement and the monogamous marriages have brought in the society. In the primitive and the barbaric ages, when men went to wars, they risked their lives. They were unsure if they'll get a wife, and if they had a wife, they used to be unsure about the paternity as well as the security of their offsprings because frequent wars meant staying months away from their homes, not knowing what's happening back there. And that is also why women in those times were kept under strict surveillances, were imposed several conditions and limitations. Moreover, the punishment for adultery was as severe as that of committing a murder. It was clear then that men needed paternal and survival security. To attain it, they needed a compromise, a wise decision, and that was self imposed monogamy. You see, man is still an animal who pretends to be civil to secure his self interest. Monogamy is one such facade he took up in the collective interest of all. Biologically, no man would refuse to have multiple women at his disposal, especially if he has all the means to take care of them, reproduce, and to ensure the survival of his progeny. Because, from an evolutionary perspective, men seek sexual variety, which results in genetic diversity. That also explains men's higher sexual appetite and their attraction to all kinds of women. However, that evolutionary desire has led to mass destruction and murders in the history. The primitive man barely got the chance to reproduce. In the barbaric ages, kings and ministers got multiple women, while the common man, that is, majority of men, got sexually and genetically deprived. In those cases, the risk to reward ratio stood against the majority of men. Such practice of polygamy favored only the rich and the powerful men who had status. Thus, to ensure paternity as well as survival, monogamy was necessary. Theoretically speaking, in a monogamous society, all men are ensured that they will get a wife. There are laws set in place that prohibit and punish adultery. The society functions in a stable yet progressive way, thereby granting survival of offsprings. All the man has to do is to attract a woman for marriage by showcasing his competence, ability to protect and provide, and some humor. Such arrangement is beneficial to men as well as women. Only the cost is that you mate and live with one person for the rest of your life. Initially, monogamy was supposed to be for lifetime. That is, the marriage was supposed to last forever, like early Hinduism, Sikhism, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, etc., originally had no concept of divorce. Hence, marital union was considered as an unbreakable bond till death. In fact, Hindus believed that marriage lasted not only till death but till seven lives, a conjoint journey of souls. It was later, when the society acknowledged the human fallibility, they introduced annulment and divorce as a way to exit, but only under exceptional circumstances. And though there were societies and religions that had divorce as a concept, it was largely discouraged and frowned upon. Anyhow, the monogamous arrangement incentivized men to direct their masculine energy for constructive purposes. Monogamy made them focus on stability and to work on being a good provider, whereas earlier polygamy caused nothing but frequent wars and instability. That is, the masculine energy was used for destructive purposes, where the winner got most women and losers got none. In a polygamous arrangement, wars and battles were the only means to get resources and women, whereas monogamy put no such limitations on men. They could become poets, builders, doctors, engineers, businessmen, etc., thus promoting and enhancing other aspects of human life. Mathematically as well, monogamy gave one for one, that is, each man had one wife, which kept him content and that balanced the proportion of women to men in the society. Whereas polygamy disproportionately affected the male to female ratio. Some men had four wives, some got two, some got one, and majority got none. Thus, polygamy kept many hungry and discontent, which led to war and conquests. Now, coming to the question of why certain religions allowed the practice of polygamy. Instead of looking at this through a religious lens, try to understand it with the perspective of history and time. There are many religions, sects, and customs that allow polygamous marriages, such as Islam has provisions for a man to have four wives. Jews and Christians and their historical figures, such as Abraham, Jacob, King David, King Solomon, etc., had multiple wives. Even the great Hindu figures, such as Krishna, Pandavas, Dashrath, etc., had many wives. It was only until the year 1955 when Hindus were legally prohibited from having more than one wife. Also, in Africa and Middle East, even today, there are several tribes that practice polygamy. But one needs to realize that polygamy is a product of a primitive and barbaric civilization. The period of time when men frequently fought with each other and caused mass destruction. It is nothing but natural that it would lead to greater economic disparity. It is obvious that men with greater share of resources would have multiple wives and many children, because even women would choose the lesser of two evils. It is in the overall interest of a woman to be a second wife of a king and live in comfort of his palace than to raise children in a hut with a soldier who barely survives. Moreover, due to frequent wars, many men died young, leaving several women as widows and unmarried. Thus, polygamous arrangement provided the solution to all those problems. Polygamy, more or less, was a necessary evil which those religions allowed for its practicality. Religious polygamy, then, was not intended to serve animalistic desires of men but to stabilize the fabric of society. As the time passed by, we reached an equilibrium and realized that monogamy was the right way for the society. That is why, in the modern times, even men belonging to religions or sects allowing multiple wives choose only to have one wife, and regardless of their religion, men of first and second world countries practice enforced monogamy, whereas men of third world countries or regions are stuck in primitive and barbaric stages of their civilization, and that is why they are still resorting to polygamy. Therefore, polygamy and monogamy are both products of our own civilization, and they are not bad per se, yet they have their own pros and cons. And if perceived purely for the overall development of the society, stability, and its progress, then enforcement of monogamy is the only right way for the collective interest of all. It is thus a misconception that polygamy benefits men. Polygamy benefits only the exceptional men who either have abundant resources to attract and maintain females, or to those men who can attract females without being burdened of taking care of them or that of their offsprings, which are often referred to as players. Apart from that, a major chunk of males are barely capable enough to even attract a single female and to convince her to marry them. Men who are married to a woman for several years would know how difficult it is to satisfy her. Whatever her man does is always almost insufficient to her, as if her heart is like a black hole that sucks in all his energy and effort. This happens because most women don't really like most men. Women, just like men, want everything best for them. They have their own dreams and expectations. Often, the man they find attractive is the exceptional man, a man who is above average in all aspects, that is, physically, financially, emotionally, and intellectually. But such exceptional man, due to his exceptionality, is either not loyal, not kind, or domesticable. That's right. Women want an exceptional beast, yet want him to be tameable. They want a man to have a pretty face, but should have his eyes only on her. They want a man to be super rich, but should spend only on her. A woman desires a king, yet wants her to be her slave. Such is the paradox of a woman's desires. Hence, monogamy is a mutual compromise of genders in their own due interest. As far as the state is concerned, it too gets several benefits from such arrangement. Monogamy serves not only the interest of men and women, but it is also in the interest of the ruling power as well. For example, first, voluntary submission of men. Since men are the real face that build and run the infrastructure of the society, it becomes essential for the state to gain their cooperation. When state implements laws to protect the interest of men, that is by enforcing monogamy, punishing adultery, granting just and fair divorces, dictating laws for succession, and protecting their property, then men get obliged to obey the state. For such protection, men are even willing to work long hours, pay taxes, become soldiers, and risk their lives. Second benefit for the state is population control. Enforcement of monogamy implies one man breeding solely with one woman for the rest of his life. Naturally, this limits the number of children a couple can have in their lifetime. This aids the state in controlling the population and thereby helping it make better policies for the welfare of the society. Third is reduced crime rates. As already discussed earlier, monogamy makes men less violent. That is, it reduces their destructive energy, or we can say it diverts their destructive energy. Married men are less likely to commit grave and serious offenses because they have a family and children to look after. Only time they become violent is either to protect their families or to protect their property. Thus, such can be referred to as protective energy than that of destructive energy. Fourth benefit is longer lifespan. Due to monogamous arrangement, men are less likely to engage in wild sexual adventures, thereby reducing the risk of STDs. Men tend to get more responsible, tend to get less depressed, tend to get less addicted, and they are more likely to take good care of their health when they are married. All this is because they have a loving wife and children at the home waiting for them. Fifth benefit is increased taxes. As the consequences of the above factors, the state becomes economically prosperous due to the stability established from men having a family. Men tend to work longer and harder to protect and provide for their families. They also tend to look beyond the present and try to build wealth for future generations. Men with family are also more likely to spend on cars, houses, groceries, internet, education, and other necessities of life. This all in totality results in greater taxes collected by the government, thereby making the society stable yet progressive at the same time. Concluding it all, monogamy is an inseparable aspect of a civil society. That is not to say that polygamous societies are completely inefficient, primitive, or barbaric. Even in the modern world, there are certain countries that have a major population practicing polygamy. In fact, modern humans themselves are a product of a polygamous or polygynous sexual behavior inhabited by our ancestors. Therefore, there is no debate about what humans naturally are, that is, polygamous or monogamous. That issue is well dealt by biologists or evolutionists. So far, all we have established is that the present state of society, and in the larger interest of all, men, women, and state, monogamy is the way to go. Unlike polygamy, monogamous societies have lesser violence, lesser issues of gender equality, lesser family rivalries, fewer disputes regarding succession, and so forth, because these are the issues which are more or less born out of polygamous arrangement. Thus, we solve a lot of issues firsthand by enforcing monogamy in the society. Therefore, the wise owls sitting at the courts should understand this significance of monogamy and marriages. They should protect the interest of men, otherwise, the time is not far when the civil society will get destroyed and men will start living like animals.